Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the fourth in our very engaging and informative Humanities in Action virtual seminar series put on by the Faculty of Humanities and Education, the University of the West Indies, Mona. Recordings of our previous seminars, Building a Resilient Creative Future Beyond COVID-19, Parts 1 and 2, can be found on Facebook by visiting the UETV page. The recording of yesterday's seminar, Future Prognoses, Vulnerability and Recovery in Past Pandemics, is located right here on YouTube on UEMONA Media. Today's seminar is entitled Media Literacy and Fake News in the COVID Era. In this age of misinformation, this is a very timely and well-needed discussion. Our presenters today include Mr. Mark-Jeffery Deans, presenting on fake news and media literacy in Jamaica, the influence of the Broadcasting Commission as a component of a global media and information literate city. Mr. Amitabh Sharma will be drawing on his wealth of experience to discuss journalism in the COVID era. And Dr. Renee Nelson, who will show us the way forward in sifting through oftentimes contradictory information when she speaks on the topic, historical research in the age of misinformation. We're not only here to provide mental food and stimulation, but also to provide a balm to the soul in these trying times. We have our wellness corner, Keeping Sane with COVID Brain, which will be hosted by psychotherapist Dr. Jennifer Stewart-Dixon. Dr. Stewart-Dixon's presentation will follow Mr. Dean's talk. We hope to have a lively question and answer session at the end of the presentations. Our chat room is monitored by Ms. Michaela Hutchinson. Ms. Hutchinson will make note of your questions, and during the question and answer section, I will read selected questions to the presenters who will answer. We will have 3 questions for each round. I'll now introduce the first presenter. Mr. Mark-Jeffery Deans is a librarian and an adjunct lecturer in the Department of Library and Information Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mona, and holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Arts in Library and Information Studies from the University of the West Indies, with a minor in International Relations. He is a trained teacher, having graduated from the Michael Teachers College, specializing in library science and general science. Mr. Deans has been in the field of librarianship for over 20 years and is a member of UNESCO's Global Alliance for Partnerships on Media and Information Literacy and the International Association for School Librarianship. Welcome, Mr. Deans.
Thank you, Dr. Plummer. I'm really grateful to be a part of this momentous occasion. And I think at this point, I will share my screen with you. Now, I want to start today by just sharing with you and set the tone really and foundation for this evening's presentation as it relates to the concept of the global mill city, media and information literacy city, and its actors, and the involvement of the Department of Library and Information Studies as well. It was back in 2018 that the DLIS was a part of DLIS, the Department of Library and Information Studies, was a part of UNESCO's annual Global Mill Week initiative and their featured conference. It provided for the department, of course, as a stakeholder, the opportunity to participate in the progress achieved towards the process of creating media information literacy for all. Global Mill Week allowed us to share our creative projects on a global platform. And so based on what you're looking at now, you'd have noticed that there are a number of actors in the mill city. And those actors, the concept is that all areas, all facets of information, so to speak, is a part of this global mill city. And so we presented our idea of what a smart city would look like under the theme focusing on library and information and agencies of change. Of course, the Broadcasting Commission would be a part of this smart mill city. In 2019, of course, we had another opportunity to be a part of the Global Media Literacy Week initiatives. And it was Dr. Stewart and myself, Dr. Stewart and I, as the head of department, we attended the 2019 activities it was in Sweden, so to speak. And we were able to be a part of that movement as well. But truth be told, the department has always been a part of UNESCO's Media and Information Literacy platform. We have always played a part. And back in the university, to be more specific, it was back in 2011 where UNESCO had an initiative where they included, of course, the Department of Library and Information Studies, as well as CARMAC, Caribbean Institute of Media and Communication. And it was a student exchange program, so to speak, back then. So the department has always played its part where media and information literacy is concerned. And to be frank, there has been occasions where the department itself has also taken on itself the opportunity to branch off, so to speak, and to do research in the area, which is separate and apart from that which UNESCO has done. Such as I think it was back in 2012-15, where members of the department, including the head of the department, Paulette Stewart, Paulette Carr, as well as Dr. Heath, Dr. Baker Gardner, Dr. Wu, and Mrs. Kerry Rodney Wellington, all had a part to play in what was then media and information literacy levels at the exit stage of the education system. So all in all, I just wanted to share with you the foundation on which the department had built or set the precedents for media and information literacy and research in the area. Now, I'm sure, a picture tells 1,000 words. I'm sure you'd agree with me when I say that we're living in what can be termed an information saturated society, where from birth, children are being exposed to more screen time, more information, so to speak. They're continually given electronic devices to alleviate what parents would call restlessness or boredom. And the issue with this, though, is that ultimately it exposes them to the risk of becoming more dependent on these devices. So a study in 2017, for example, showed that of a study of 350 children, ages birth to 4 years old, they found that at age 4, 75% of children had their own devices and half had their own TV. But what was more stunning, though, was the fact that most of the children ages 3 to 4 used their devices unsupervised. And that was what was more shocking where the study was concerned. So when we speak about an information saturated society, in a larger sphere of things, we can look at it as an information saturated world. The increased volume of information available to society has rendered us really prolific users of various media platforms. Indeed, we crave information. We not only create, but we consume and share information instantly and freely using various media platforms. Now, in this picture, you may notice that there's a picture of a plant. And what it is depicting really is the fact that we are so dependent on the media for what is real and what is not. Sometimes we no longer go out in the world to explore. All that we need to know, or we think we need to know, we gather from online. So we have become so dependent on the media for information, and hence we are living in this information saturated world. And again, for many of us, as long as we are able to send and receive information, that is good enough. Whatever you want to do to us, just don't trouble or Wi-Fi services. allow us to be able to log on and to share information, create information, and use information. It would be good. Doesn't matter. And so we continue with that. Even past this life, we may say, because we are so dependent on this, on information and media. Now, what does it say for Jamaica? And the thing is, when we think about how Jamaica is seen, so to speak, on a global sphere, Reporters Without Borders, so to speak, and we can look at the traditional media here. Reporters Without Borders, their ranking showed that in 2019, Jamaica was 8th place. So in a sense, how we use information, or how we allow reporting of information, the freedom of the press to gather information, so to speak, is highly rated in Jamaica when compared to other countries in the world. And that is good for us, really good for us. In fact, in 2020, we stepped up 2 places. And so now we are at 6th place, so to speak. So when we think about the freedom to gather, to use information, the freedom of the press to share information with us without abuse, so to speak, Jamaica is ranked highly. So what really is the problem? The problem is that with the introduction, or more so, the more we become dependent on social media or the platform itself to gather information, we are now in a situation where this information, so to speak, is not controlled by one person. It's not controlled necessarily by ethical standard or written ethical standards. And so we gather information from many different social media platforms, so to speak. The issue is ethics. While it is that we can say that traditional media is controlled or governed by ethics or ethical standards, or those who are at the helm of gathering information and sharing this information, of course, they are governed by ethical standards. With social media, the truth is that it is not so. And so that presents itself a challenge for the general public, so to speak. So ethics is the real issue, and how it is the challenge to govern the use, creation, dissemination of information. Now, as I said before, there are really 5 principles, core principles, that the traditional media prescribes to. And we can look at these: truth and accuracy. Whatever is sent out there must be, it's not perfect, but it should be, as much as possible, governed by truth and accuracy. Independence, it shouldn't be dependent on anyone at all. It should be free from outside issues, so to speak, persons misleading, misrepresenting what is actually being said. Fairness and impartiality, we shouldn't be, in a sense, they shouldn't be governed by any political alliances whatsoever. And humanity, remember, when we share information, so to speak, we have to think about the human side. We're sharing information about someone. We're sharing information about someone's reality. And so we must think about the human side of information and how it affects persons. And of course, accountability. At some point, you must be able to say that, yes, I had sent this information, and be able and ready to retract that information if possible. So, as I said before, the real issue is ethics. And so the term fake news is seen as a relatively new term. However, it has had a profound impact on the lives of many people, professions, institutions, and countries globally. And when we think about fake news, there are a lot of things that surrounds this term, so to speak, such as disinformation, misinformation, propaganda, web traffic. There's so many things, so much information surrounding fake news. But all of that needs to be seen and discussed within a context. So the term fake news, according to Wardle and Dirkhamshire, is woefully inadequate to describe the complex phenomena of information pollution. They identify this for two reasons. One, politicians' manipulation of the term for their own gain. And we have seen that in recent news, so to speak, especially in the US, we have seen played out. The use of the term by the powerful to manipulate the press freedom. So for those two main reasons, Ward and Dirkhamshire has said that the term fake news needs to be looked at even closer. The word itself is inadequate to describe what is really happening, where information is generated and used and abused, so to speak. So they prescribe an interrelated concept where fake news is concerned, where all three, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, should be looked at. And we shouldn't just generalize and say all of this is fake news. But there are actually differences in these three terms. So whereas we have misinformation, false connection, misleading content, which is rightfully so, separate from malinformation, which is a leaking of information, harassment of someone, or hate speech. And together you have what is called disinformation, which is manipulated content, fabricated, so to speak. So just to be clear as to what these three terms really mean and how they can be used in context, let's just look at them even closer. Disinformation, according to Ayrton and Possidy, is the deliberate, often orchestrated attempts to confuse or manipulate people through delivering dishonest information to them. Misinformation, on the other hand, is misleading information created or disseminated without manipulative or malicious intent. So the intention here with misinformation, or the spreading of the information to hurt, may not be intentional, as in disinformation where it is intentional. And then you have malinformation, information that is based on reality, but used to inflict harm on a person, organization, or country. And a lot of that has to do with gossip. So an example of disinformation, of course, would be a case during an election campaign. This information may be seen in the deliberate and purposeful attempt of a political group to spread deceptive information on its opponent, most times during campaigning. Now, if you recall, some time ago, there was information being circulated, and it was reported that the PNP, People's National Party, so to speak, was being blamed for extradition rumors that was being spread on members of parliament, the then sitting parliament, the JLP. And that came across by the JLP as information being sent to disinform the public. And the same thing on the other hand, where Minister Bunting, of course, his camp dismissed that they were actually breaking away from the People's National Party, so to speak, during the election period. So all in all, disinformation during an election campaign, a lot of times what we're seeing when one party tends to spread information or give information on another party, allegedly or otherwise, so to speak, is what is termed disinformation, which is quite different, of course, from misinformation. Misinformation is intentional or unintentional, as we said before, spreading of false rumors, pranks, or mislabeled representation of the truth on a particular topic. And so I want to share with you what the Broadcasting Commission, and they have done a lot of work, so to speak, on misinformation. So I'm going to share with you just a clip, something that you're familiar with, an example of how they tackled misinformation.
Hey, this is your girl Tisha. I'm the latest, use the fastest. On the program, but we're close to it. What you must see a good friend is here to make one newborn baby, but I never commit a sin. Oh, you could say, yeah, girl. So what? I'm a friend now. I bet you watch the world the news. But it doesn't mean I could keep up with so what going on in my country. I don't know. News just is one man shooting brothers in one language with one dumpling and in couple. The victim pinch is from St. Thomas and cookie in the ear, don't mash up pinch if you want to dumpling. Pinch you and me see this morning. Not over this for a country, so you can do accident tomorrow. Look at fella, you just mash up each other for foodie. Pinch it, so look at fella. I'm not going to she must have turned with this. Me kind of. No, so we need to send out a broadcast message. We can't believe boy Pinchy pray for Pinchy, who is now in critical condition. He was attacked over a donkey. Send this to everybody you know. Yeah, girl, we need to pray for Pinchy. Stop praying for Pinchy. Pinchy not need a prayer. Go on it. I didn't know. People like you in about check away here, but so it going. I'm just send out the broadcast to people them pray for him and the public. Just send out a broadcast, girl. Pinch you up so she just don't put some bones to your fish for him. All the thing wrong with him, a bone stuck at truth. And if you wash it down with the lemonade, if you make it dumpling to the pinch in a bed, and plus pinch you up in their road and see a broadcast. Suppose the woman shut down or suffer from shock for no reason. Lord, I know my thoughts for your coming news. Which news? Think before you broadcast. A reminder from the Broadcasting Commission. That's it.
All right, so just to, I hope you're still seeing my screen. Right, and that would be an example of being misinformed, so to speak, misinformation. And actually, the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica won an award for that advertisement. They won an award for that advertisement. Now, another example, or when we speak about malinformation, the deliberate publication of personal and confidential information on a person in order to gain an advantage or an edge, that's malinformation. And again, we may be familiar with what the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica would have done where that is concerned. So I'm going to show another clip for malinformation from the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica.
Make it a new day. I'm reminded by the Broadcasting Commission. We the BCJ. What if it was your friend in the mix?
let me just, right. So let me get back to, that would be an example of malinformation and how the Broadcasting Commission would have tried to alleviate those problems in Jamaica, so to speak. We'll speak a little bit more about the Broadcasting Commission and their role. But I want to address the issue from UNESCO's perspective, because UNESCO has brought together a broader framework of media and information literacy. And they have emphasized on the notion that whilst there may exist distinctions, there are linkages between media and other providers of information. Let me right. I hope you're seeing my screen again. Right. So they have emphasized the notion that whilst there may exist distinctions, there are linkages between media and other providers of information. With this holistic view in mind, it is really imperative that a broader focus of media and information literacy and its impact on developing countries be considered and used to empower citizens to seek, evaluate, use, and create information. And this has to be done in an effective way so as to achieve citizens' personal, social, occupational, educational goal. In fact, UNESCO and we as well, the entire, we should all see MIL as the basic human right, so to speak, of individuals. That is how UNESCO really puts forward MIL, and that is how we should be looking at media and information literacy. Now, media and information literacy, of course, lies at the core of freedom of expression and information. And that's because it empowers citizens to understand the functions of media and other providers and allow them the opportunity to critically evaluate the content of media and to make informed decisions as users and producers of information and media content. Now, Wardle and Durkinson, again, they looked at the role, or the elements rather, of media and information literacy. And they saw three distinctive roles playing out. The role of the agent, the message, and the interpreter. And the role of the agent, when we look at the role of the agent, we're looking at who are the agent, who created the information, who produced it and distributed the information, and what was the motive behind the creation and distribution of the information. We look at the content of the message. What type of message was it? What format was it sent in? And what is the characteristics of this message, so to speak? And the messenger, how the message is interpreted, so to speak. When the message was received by someone, how did they interpret that message? And what action, if any, did they take? Of course, they again looked at three phases of information disorder. That is the agent who is responsible for the creation of the fabricated message, creation when the message is created, the production when the message is turned into a media product, to the point to which it is actually distributed. So who is responsible for the creation of the fabricated message may be different from the agent who produced the message. Furthermore, the producer of the message may be ultimately different from the agents who distributed the message. So it's not one size fits all, but there are different actors in information disorder, or to the point where the information was created, disseminated, and actually accessed and used. And we have to look at those as different segments of information disorder. So, addressing the role of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, it was last year, 2019, that I did a sort of content analysis of the Gleaner, looking at what it was that was said about the Broadcasting Commission against what it is that the Broadcasting Commission actually does. And I looked at a number of Gleaner articles, and I'm going to go to those quickly. But the role of the Broadcasting Commission in Jamaica is really to mediate, to really regulate, so to speak, media content. And so media regulation refers to the process by which a range of specific, often legally binding tools are applied to media systems and institutions to achieve established policy goals such as pluralism, diversity, competition, and freedom. So Jamaica's main media communication regulator, as we said before, is the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. And the BCC, J, is a body corporate established under the Broadcasting and Radio Rediffusion Act, and is a successor to the Broadcasting Authority following the 1986 amendment of the BRA, making the Commission the Caribbean region's most established communication regulator. So there are really four main roles of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. There are media regulators, as I said before, developing a modern framework for media regulation in Jamaica, taking into consideration emerging opportunities and challenges of the digital age. They're involved in school outreach projects, where primary and secondary schools are given opportunities and challenge in the digital society, and they are there to assist where that is concerned. Various media literacy campaigns are out there. We have seen a few. Produced, advertised as part of its ongoing media literacy and digital awareness program. Of course, I said that ad which we just saw about Pinchy, they won an award, so to speak, for that ad. Social media, they have a number of social media followers and Twitter followers as well as YouTube. So they're really out there as advocates for regulating media and the content of media, more specifically. Now, as I said before, the Gleaner was used as a source of and discussant in fake news. And the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica was, of course, a part of that research. And a keen examination of the following Gleaner publications on fake news, aligned with the work of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, highlights some key features of the Gleaner as a source and discussant on the issue in the last 2 years. So it should be noted that these 6 articles, which I'm going to be looking at, are the first hits to be generated from a search with the key search terms Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, fake news, and Jamaica Gleaner. So those are the 3 terms that were used to do the search on fake news and media and information literacy in Jamaica. And so this was what was a result of that. Now, these are a bit wordy slides, but I want to pay attention to what is really being advocated and what was really said, so to speak. So in this article, which is a 2018 article, Broadcasting Commission, they had won the global awards along with Porsche and Usain Bolt advertisement. It was published in April 6, 2018. The article highlights the award-winning advertisement by the Broadcasting Commission, titled Pinchy Dead, as we said before. And it was aired over 2 million times. It was one of the first communication in the world to address the problem of fake news. And for that, they had actually won the award, as I said before. Now, again, 2019 social media clampdown, Broadcasting Commission wants to police online sites. This was a plea by the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, advocating for greater role in media regulation. They wanted to be given the opportunity to have a greater hand in policing social media platform. And that was against the fact that, or their concern was really the fact that persons were being, especially children, were being exposed to cyberbullying, pornography, and other violent content, hate speech, unethical advertising, scamming, terrorist recruitment, and disinformation. In another article, 2019, Jamaican The Digital Era. This was published in March 19, where the article highlighted the thoughts of Anthony Clayton, Professor of Caribbean Sustainable Development at the University of the West Indies, and Chairman of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. That should be Cordell Green. And it looked at the Broadcasting Commission needing greater support in improving media literacy throughout Jamaica. So the need was to have the Broadcasting Commission really have a greater hand or role in policing the media online content. They acknowledge the polarization of politics by fake news and filtered hate speech as well. Another article, Scammers use WhatsApp hoax to lure recruits to upper camp, published March 19, 2019. This article highlights a situation in which scammers circulated a fake social media post inviting many young people to apply for jobs. And to an extent, that was sort of successful. More than 2,000 young men and women turned up at upper camp for that job. And so the article highlighted the harm that unregulated social media content can do in the country and internationally, so to speak. On April 15, 2019, Office of Political Ombudsman launched his website, published. Well, it was published in April 15, 2019. The article highlights the launch of the official website of the Office of the Political Ombudsman in 2019. And the purpose of the website was to give the Office of the Ombudsman greater online presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter in an effort to regulate the political atmosphere in Jamaica. And the article, of course, mentioned the Broadcasting Commission's commendation for the initiative of the Office of the Political Ombudsman and their effort in good governance. Another article, lack of legislation delays BCJ's social media plans, and this was published August 12, 2019. This article actually highlights the difficulty that the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica faces in enacting the trusted YouTube flagger status it received from YouTube. Now, the YouTube Trusted Flagger program was developed by YouTube to help provide robust tools for individuals, governments, agencies, and non-government organizations that are particularly effective at notifying YouTube of content that violates community guidelines, so to speak. And so the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, they wanted to have be more visible in assisting globally the work of control, well, not, I wouldn't say controlling, but of course, making sure that that fake news, as we call it, is really controlled. All right, so that would have been my presentation, so to speak. I just want to wrap up by saying that a closer look at Jamaica, which we should be looking at, would not only help us to understand the importance of the harm and dangers of fake news, but also to understand how we can actually help our citizens to understand the dangers of fake news. The truth is that social media is not going anywhere. And it's important that citizens, of course, are armed with the necessary tools and knowledge that may help them to navigate through what we call fake news, so to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deans. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, and I have no doubt our viewers did as well. Now it is time to turn to our wellness session, Keeping Sane with COVID Brain. I want to introduce today's facilitator. Dr. Stuart Dixon is a physiotherapist and an independent consultant working in the field of public health for the past 15 years, with an emphasis on HIV prevention, behavior change, and adolescent sexual health. Instrumental in policy analysis, monitoring and evaluation, program development and implementation, and qualitative health research, Dr. Stuart Dixon has worked for several international donor agencies, providing technical assistance in Jamaica as well as countries in the wider Caribbean and South and Central America. She's a member of the World Health Organization HIV Testing Services Guidelines Development Group since 2015. A graduate of Middlesex University in England, she holds a doctorate degree in psychotherapy and sees clients at the University of the West Indies in Western Jamaica, as well as her private practice in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Dr. Stuart Dixon is currently a board member of Children of Faith, an NGO that serves the needs of children and families made vulnerable due to HIV, and is a professional member of Jamaica Psychological Society and the American Counseling Association. Welcome, Dr. Stuart Dixon.
Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure to be here. And I always welcome invitations to speak on mental health and helping our population to keep sane, regardless of having a COVID brain. So thank you. So today I'm just going to highlight 4 basic points that I think we need to be mindful of as we try to keep sane with a COVID brain. One is being realistic. And when I speak of being realistic, I speak about being realistically managing your time, not doing what is comfortable, because being realistic is not always comfortable, you know. Sometimes we have a tendency to take on several projects, and I ask you, is this realistic? We are hoping to be productive, and it doesn't always work. So how can we be more realistic as we try to maintain our mental health during COVID-19? Now, the next point I want to raise is being able to maintain a structure. Structure is so important, and we can maintain structure through the use of routines. Do we wake up at a consistent time? Do we have lunch? Do we start and end work at a set time? I know many of us are working from home, and sometimes it's quite difficult to keep that balance between home, things that we do at home, and our work responsibilities. And so sometimes setting a routine and having a very specific structure helps in managing that. Maintaining your structure can also be very useful as we look at a sleep structure. I've heard people talk about having long naps in the day and not able to sleep in the night. And when they have to be productive, it interferes with their ability to be productive during the workday. And therefore, trying to keep a sleep schedule. We maintain structure by planning. What is our plan? What are we hoping to accomplish? What are we planning to do next week? Setting, again, very realistic timelines to get things accomplished. Maintaining structure, we also have to be very focused on what it is that we need to accomplish and outline the steps that we need to accomplish same. Now, we've heard a lot about building supportive relationships. Who are we close to emotionally, and how do we maintain that closeness during COVID-19? We may be physically distant, but we do not have to be emotionally distant. We can still pick up the phone, we can still call our relatives and our friends. And it is important for us to build and maintain these social relationships, because these are the relationships that we rely on for support. And so if we're not making contact with people, it is very likely that we're not sharing our concerns and our stressors with people. And this is not useful for maintaining a healthy mental health. So another area that we can use with our building of relationships is being gratitude and being altruistic? What are we involved in? Is there an activity that we are helping persons to maintain safe? Are we passing on accurate information? What activity are you engaged in that allows you to be connected to people and maintaining relationships? What kind of support structures do we have in our homes and in our families? And how are we using the time that we have with family? Now, sometimes we can be distracted. We allow our phones and the television to interrupt the time where we are bonding with family. And at this time, it is very important for us to carve out time for relationships and to build those relationships and strengthen them. So one of the more important points that I want to bring out today is how do we take care of ourselves? Because as we rush around and do the many things that we have to do, we also have to spend time ensuring that we are doing okay. Now, a lot of people like to engage in exercise. People will run, they will swim, but sometimes we can't get out and about, and that can be problematic. But we still, hopefully, can be able to go outside and move around in our environment and do some exercise. Now, for others, they're not into exercise, and so we have to find other ways to take care of ourselves. Are you into yoga? Do you like personal reflection? Will you do meditation? All of these activities help you to take care of yourself. Let's not forget that we can still be playful, and we can still laugh, and we can still enjoy humor, because that is a critical part of maintaining our mental health. Being emotionally aware of what is happening to us is important. And you know, Mr. Deans, whether the information is dis, or mal, we have to be very careful about how much information we take in. When we are overloaded with information, this can lead to anxiety. And we have to be careful that as we maintain our mental health, we manage the amount of information that we take in. So I want to get back a little bit to dealing with our emotions. Firstly, it's important for us to recognize that emotional responses are normal. They are normal. And it is what is important is that we watch them, we monitor them, and we understand them. They are actually telling us what is happening inside ourselves. If I am angry, if I am sad, what is it that is causing me to feel the way that I'm feeling? So this is why activities such as personal reflection and meditation, having some time to sit alone with your thoughts, is very useful as we try to maintain our mental health. So some of the things that we probably would need to avoid is some unhelpful thinking patterns. One being overgeneralizing. Seeing a pattern based upon a single event and being overly broad in the conclusions that we draw. And a very good way for us to pinpoint when we are in unhelpful thinking mode is when we start using words like every time, nothing works, all the time, and forever is when we have to begin to think, am I overgeneralizing here? Another unhelpful thinking pattern is personalization. You blame yourself, or you begin to take responsibility for something that was not completely your fault. Or the other way, conversely, is blaming others for something that wasn't their fault. So how do we begin to balance? Sometimes there are a lot of circumstances that relate to why something has happened. It doesn't have to be your fault. Neither does it have to be the fault of someone else. So we have to also watch our emotional reasoning, assuming that because we feel a particular way, that we think that that is actually true. Our feelings are not always connected with what is realistic or what is true. Also, we need to be careful about magnification, so how do we not make a mountain out of a molehill? Be careful that we maintain a sense of balance as we begin to understand the issues that we are faced with. So, as we deal with the symptoms of anxiety, we're talking about, are you having shortness of breath? Are your muscles being tense? Are you losing your cool? Are you getting angry quickly? Are you snapping? Are you tired? And these are some of the symptoms of anxiety that you might want to keep your eye on. Now, a lot of these issues can be managed by speaking with support systems, family, trusted friends. But if we're finding that these symptoms are being repeated and they're happening ongoing, this is an everyday phenomenon for you, then maybe it's time to reach out and have a conversation with one of our counselors, the University Counseling Service. Contact information is 876-970-1992. And this service is from Monday to Friday at 8:30 to 2:30. You may also call our WhatsApp counselor on duty at 876-521-3473. We have a psychiatrist on duty if you are really concerned about some of your experiences, and she can be reached at 876-551-0118. The UE Helps hotline is a phone counseling service available for calls, text, and WhatsApp, and that number is 876-294-0042. So one of the things that I want to do now is to help you with a little activity for when you are beginning to feel very anxious. Situate yourself in a quiet area where you feel relaxed and calm. Take note of your breathing. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. As you become in tune with your breathing, acknowledge 5 things that you can see around you. When you've done that, acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you. Then 3 things that you can hear around you. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. In a moment when you're experiencing anxiety, this little activity can help to calm you down by focusing on your breathing and allowing your thinking to be removed from all the other elements that is the source of your anxiety. I hope this is helpful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart Dixon. I appreciate this very informative and healing presentation. I plan to put it into practice. I am going to do my breathing, find a quiet space. I am going to go ahead and try and see, what 2 things I can smell, what 1 thing I can fix, and I actually learned a bit because sometimes we take on so much and we blame ourselves and we internalize so many things. So thank you so much. And at the end of our presentations, I'm going to give the numbers that Dr. Stewart Dixon gave for the UA Health Services and the UA Counseling Services. I know that there are many individuals who are watching right now and who will be watching in the future, staff, students, and others who are very much affected by COVID-19, by the anxieties. We're facing so many uncertainties from family and economic circumstances, the travel, so many things. So it's good to know that at the University of the West Indies, we offer counseling, psychotherapy, and psychiatric services. Now, I want to ensure that we all get to survive and maintain our sanity in what seems to be a spiraling, insane 2020. Now, I want to introduce our second speaker, and I'm sure he's going to bring us right back to the insanity. Mr. Amitabh Sharma is a media professional and professional consultant in communication. Originally from New Delhi, India, Mr. Sharma has made Jamaica his home since 2006. He has over 25 years experience as editor, writer, teacher, trainer, and consultant in communication. He's the opinion editor at the Gleaner and editor of the Sunday Gleaner Arts and Leisure section. He's also the conceptualizer and host of the radio program Namaste India on Cool 97 FM. With his wealth of experience, Mr. Sharma has taught in the faculty's very own Caribbean School of Media and Communication and the Knight Center for Journalism at the University of Texas. Now to you, Mr. Sharma.
Hi, good afternoon. Can everybody see me or listen to me? I can't. Okay. Thank you so much, Nicole. And well, I'll try my level best not to take anybody back to any madness that we are living in right now. We'll do the whoosas and all. So what I've been asked to talk about is how has news gathering and the news per se changed in these times of COVID-19. So it's a challenging time for all of us because as you would imagine, and news gathering is a process where one has to go and go out and be out in the field in order to gather news. So now what has happened? Social distancing. What has happened? We have lockdowns. What has happened? We have everything closed down. So there is a lot of constraints. So I can talk definitively about the Gleaner. The newspaper, the size has been drastically reduced. The sections have been reduced merely for the fact that there's not anything happening outdoors. So if you may, there's no quote unquote action. So things like sporting events, you saw that the Champs has been cancelled. A number of entertainment, I mean, that's cancelled. Nobody's eating out because the restaurants are closed. So where do you get those feature and soft side of news? So that's where the biggest hit is right now. All one can do is to report and see, okay, how the businesses are faring, which is again a sort of a story. I mean, it might be a sad sort of a story, but then again, it also talks about the human resilience of how people, small businesses, and other people are trying to cope up with this pandemic, and which has just been thrown upon us. It's like, and it's been also called the invisible enemy. So it's, I mean, I don't think so any one of us in our living memories have experienced this, save for people who would have seen the world wars, which I think would be people we can count on our fingertips. So the thing is that the whole constraint is how to get the news. So the news, even the news conferences, as you notice, there's nothing which is now face to face. So everything has to be via Zoom. And I think, Nicole, if we were in the normal days, this would be happening on a face to face with an audience in front of us. But right now we have to work with what we have, and work with work and ensure that whatever we are doing is it's uh, also factual, because that's one of the things that was talked about by Mark in the beginning. So the problem that one is facing right now, being a part of a news organization, is how to gather the news. So of course, technology is playing a huge role in this. So I am sure before March, a lot of people would not have known about Zoom, and that's now the buzzword. That's now the go-to word these days. Also, yeah, the WhatsApps of the world, even Facebook has started their own chat rooms, and you can have group chats. Google has started that. So in essence, what has happened is our area of we are constrained. We are very constrained in the sense that we cannot go out and have a conversation one-on-one with people, because even to report, it's very necessary to bring in all the elements in your news or in the feature that you're writing that surrounds a particular scenario, a particular person. So those elements would be missing. Like, you can't describe how the room is like, whether the weather is warm, whether it's sunny, because you are interacting over an electronic medium. Having said that, it is still the news, as you can imagine, is mostly, a majority is revolving around coronavirus, the cases, what are the fallouts from the coronavirus, and how it's affecting the different segments and the sectors, individuals, industries. What about? I mean, if we want to talk about how is it affected? Well, travel has been affected a lot. How people are stranded. Then and now, unfortunately, since last month, the conversations have moved to now tackling the issue of racism in the United States, which is blown exponentially, and for a reason, because there are things. So a lot of things have happened now, but you see in the coverage of all these rallies and all these protests that are happening in the United States, people are out on the streets. So we don't know the whole notion of social distancing. How's that coming into play, and what would be the resultant spike in the cases of coronavirus? So there are a lot of questions one need to ask, but at the same time, yes, life goes on. But the problem, the biggest issue with COVID is nobody knows physically how it affects. If it was an injury, you would know that, okay, listen, there are physical scars. If somebody is going through some challenges, you would see the progression of that disease or that system in a human being. We don't know what COVID does to people. So there are a lot of constraints. So in order to bring out again the positive side of news, that's another challenge which we try to do as much as possible, utilizing technology. Okay, if we can't have a face-to-face, let's email the questions and ask them to email back the interviewees, or have sessions over Skype or Zoom. So the constraint is there. And as I said, like, if you notice sections like entertainment, sections like lifestyle, sections like sports, even arts have been hit because there's nothing happening out there. So when there's nothing happening, what are we to report? So that is a constraint, and we are just hoping that this will pass us by, sooner than later, which we don't know because we are hearing about a second wave that could be more severe than the first. So we have to brace for all of that. Also, we need to see how we roll back to a normal and what will be that new normal going forward. Also, the consumption of news has spiked, especially over the online platform. So the spike is going like this, but at the same time, there are because businesses are hit and the economies have taken a severe beating. That's why the revenues are down all over. So it is sort of a ripple effect all over the place. But one has to try and see how innovatively one can get the news and also report it as much as normally in the normal circumstances as possible. People are working out of home, so one has to deal with patchy internet, one has to deal with the erratic power supply at times. So everything sort of, and then you're not maybe not in the conducive of circumstances. I mean, end of the day, the reporters out there, all of us are human beings too. So we are living in community. So you might have your neighbor deciding that they need to play loud music. How do you conduct an interview over that scenario? Okay, or you might have some other exigencies going on out there. Somebody wants to drive a bike with their muffler taken out. So things have changed. So in order to effectively report news, bring it to the broader public, what has happened is, well, technology has taken a very pivotal role in this. So technology is the key driver. So as much as like what Mark also mentioned, is that if you were to give, if somebody was dying and they were given a choice, they would say, okay, I want to take my selfie and post it on social media, much more than can I have some oxygen or something. So it's become, I think it's replicated that oxygen. It's become the oxygen of the information gathering and the information delivery of the news and other things. So it has had a lot of impact, and we are hoping that a lot of positives will come out, which means that we can have more happening remotely, wherein the media professionals are more equipped with their skill sets. Like they have more skill sets in terms of they are not merely reporting, they are also producing podcasts, they are producing short videos, they are taking photographs. So things like that, that's now, it's now the time to also up one's skill sets. And also, this is, I'm talking from the professional standpoint, and then look out, I mean, and look out further, what, when this pandemic passes us by, when this is all over, what sort of world are we presented with? How are we going to report that world? Things are opening up. So, I mean, how do you report? I mean, where do you see the excitement of a football match or an athletic event or a cricket match when there's nobody in the stadium? So, you're missing out on that excitement, and then rules have to be rewritten for a while. How does that affect us as professional? Because we are also in the front line, we are out there reporting. So, I mean, how do we take care of our own health, both physical and mental health? Because there's a lot is going on, which is not, as I said. I mean, things like going to a film, a movie, going to an art show, or going to a concert are things that would take you off the daily burdens. But at the same time, those things are not happening. So is it that we would be more virtual events? And if we are seeing those virtual events, how do we capture the essence of it? How do we capture the emotions? Because the constraint is online. There's as much you can do and no more. It is providing that vital link. At least nobody's cut off from the world. You're still getting your news. The newspaper is still out bright and early. We're still working as we were working in the quote unquote normal circumstances. So things have been, as I said, I mean, I'm being repetitive, but the thing is, it is a challenging situation right now, working offsite and then effectively communicating with each other, with your team, and also effectively communicating with your audience and ensuring that whatever goes out is factual and it is in time. Because again, one is having a fight with the non-traditional media. So everybody who has a cell phone will take a video, and there you have, bang, you have news on your Instagram live or your Facebook live, or just tweet something. But then again, we are going through this phase right now, and we need to, as I said, sit down and reinvent ourselves professionally. Look at what professionally we can learn and up our skills, and also for the audience to be more to give the audience, our readers, our listeners, and the viewers, to give some sort of positive messages in all of this pandemic that is going on, so that they also feel that, okay, in spite of everything, there's a lot of hope, and we will overcome everything. So thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate this opportunity, and over to you.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Mr. Sharma. One of the things I realized that it's a very trying time for everybody, and most especially journalists. Many journalists in this era and in this decade of so-called fake news have been attacked while trying to do their jobs, and there's also the budgetary attacks going on as well. So you guys, I have to commend you on the job that you do. You know, our audience will no doubt learn quite a bit from your insight. And now we turn to our third presenter. I have the honor of introducing to you Dr. Renee Nelson. Dr. Nelson is a lecturer in the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of the West Indies, Mona. Her research interests include Caribbean regionalism, social history, and digital history. Welcome, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Dr. Plummer. I'm gonna share my screen about now. Right. So the thing about fake news and misinformation is that they're not recent phenomena. Although we tend to associate them with social media and the mainstream press in the 21st century, their origins go way back, even before the invention of the printing press. Misinformation existed in both literate and pre-literate societies. And within the former, misinformation was conveyed through written means such as letters, and within the latter, that is, those societies which had not developed the use of writing, misinformation was transmitted orally, such as through rumors and false stories. And the first recorded use of the term fake news was in the late 19th century in the United States, where it was also known as yellow journalism, by newspapers and magazines attempting to validate the quality of their information at the expense of their rivals. Now, in the digital age of the 21st century, with the internet being a force of good or evil, so to speak, with its treasure trove of information and accompanying problem of misinformation, we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of misinformation? Why spread fake news? There is a myriad of reasons, including propaganda for political, ideological, financial, and entertainment purposes. And these reasons all transcend time. For example, a New York newspaper in 1835 published a series of articles about the discovery of life on the moon, citing the renowned British astronomer Sir John Herschel as the person responsible for the discovery. While Sir Herschel was certainly real, as we all know, the existence of life on the moon is not. And the purpose of these articles was to increase sales. And even after the fabrication was later revealed, the newspaper did not issue a retraction. Likewise, was it sensationalist coverage of the Cuban War of Independence, of Spanish tyranny against Cubans, that was one of the reasons for the United States becoming involved and precipitating the Spanish-American War in 1898. Spain's repressive measures to halt the Cuban rebellion were vividly depicted in American newspapers, generating empathy for the rebels and widespread popular demand for action to stop Spanish atrocities and free the Cuban people. Furthermore, the immediate cause for US involvement was the explosion and sinking of the USS Maine in the harbor of Havana, which killed more than 260 of the crew. And although the culprit responsible was never definitively identified, many Americans suspected Spain, goaded on by newspaper coverage such as this one here, and spurred on by newspaper sensationalism, a popular rallying cry became, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain." However, the propagation of fake news and misinformation is not limited to just sections of the media. It also involves people in authority like politicians, opinion makers who mislead the public through their conceptions of history and uses for the past. One notable example of this deliberate use of misinformation was Nazi Germany and its extreme nationalism born out of xenophobia, that is, the hatred of and prejudice against other nations and peoples. Fake news propaganda was actively used in particular to build anti-Semitic fervor and justify the persecution of the Jewish people. Indeed, the work of genuine historians has been discredited and censored in such societies where state repression is practiced, in an effort to maintain control over the populace by determining what aspects of information about the past should be disseminated. Another example of this was in communist Eastern Europe during the Cold War period. In these cases, information unfavorable to the agenda of the state is banned and a false narrative propagated. So, whatever the reasons may be, misinformation and fake news does a disservice to the societies affected and essentially makes the world less informed. As the American journalist and cultural historian Neil Gabler argued, fake news and misinformation set out to destroy truth altogether, to set us adrift in a world of belief without facts, a world where there is no defense against lies. Likewise, historian Jason Steinhoff pointed out that the consequences of fake news are very real. Inaccurate or purposefully misleading information in the news media has the power to influence our politics, our governments, and the policies we make for the future. Nevertheless, it is information about the past that has the power to shape identities, nations, institutions, and opinions of others. So where does the discipline of history and historians fit in all this? History can be defined as a rational examination of the past, an analysis of how humans acted in the past, and a quest for an understanding of past societies and peoples. Historians search for an explanation of events of the past, for understanding of the consequences of those events and the impact of those events on the present. And historians do this through the critical evaluation of primary sources, whether written oral, material, or expressive. Indeed, the historian recognizes that within the body of primary sources, there exists bias and sometimes distortions and even forgeries, and thus treat the material accordingly. Hence, the value and role of historical research in the age of misinformation cannot be overstated. It is about setting the record straight, so to speak, as fake news can eventually become fake history if left unchecked. Indeed, a significant amount of the information disseminated and accessed today is via the internet, especially through social media. The general public often gets a watered down version of history, lacking context and sound analysis. So ease of access to information does not necessarily mean quality of information. As such, many people cannot distinguish between fact and fiction. As Canadian historian and media commentator Crystal Ayavier argued, sound historical research can illuminate how fraudulent stories were used not simply to win elections or sell papers, but to promote war, trumpet state propaganda, mislead consumers, and justify systems of colonialism and oppression. And historical methodology, with its keen attention to detail and external and internal criticism of primary source material, and preoccupation with establishing authenticity and reliability of said sources, is in the best position to combat misinformation and fake news. Essentially then, the role of historians and historical research in this age of misinformation and fake news is an important one in helping people to take a critical approach to where the information they're exposed to originates and how to best interpret what they're reading and listening to. And where does this all begin? In the history classroom, where students are taught how to carefully question source material, and for the majority of students these days, this undoubtedly means online information. As historian Kevin Levin puts it, the remedy for the spread of fake news? History teachers. So in concluding, healthy skepticism and a critical eye and ear are more than necessary in this age of misinformation, and certainly in this COVID-19 era, where false information espousing alleged treatment and cures, for example, have done more harm than good. And teaching people to think critically underscores the continued relevance and value of the discipline of history and the wider humanities to the needs of the present world. As Christos Ayavi wrote, the role historians can play in providing viable information, even without definitive answers, is a vindication of the humanities in our times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nelson. Frankly, I learned quite a bit, and I can't wait for the question and answer section because I want to ask you more about yellow journalism. So I'm putting you on standby. I was very intrigued by that. Now, one of the benefits of your presentation is that our listeners receive the tools that they need to actually maneuver this age of deliberate misinformation that you can't really put down. You don't have to buy a newspaper to see it. It's right there on your social media. So I want to talk a little bit more about that in the question and answer section as well. But what this is really good, our presentation started from literally media literacy in this age. We talked about journalism, and we ended on a very hopeful note with history showing us historians showing us how to navigate this fake news era using skills like critical thinking, interpretation, and might I add, motivation of the writers in this period. A hearty thank you to our presenters as we now move into our question and answer session. Now, this is just a reminder. As stated at the beginning of today's session, I will read selected questions from the chat to the presenters who will answer. We'll have 3 questions, and I will basically tell which presenters the questions are directed to. So we'll have 3 questions for each round. And in the interest of time, because I know we're actually moving, we're a little bit, well, we've taken up a little bit more time than we planned. We're going to make the session last around 15 minutes at most. I'll be as quick as possible, and I'll ask the presenters when you give your responses to be as succinct as possible. So let me see if there are any questions. All right, so there are no questions so far from our viewers. No, you know me, I fast already, so I have a whole bunch of questions for you, right? So this one is from Mark. I know you may have addressed this already, but with COVID-19, is there an increase? You spoke on multiple occasions about saturation and media saturation and information saturation. Do you find, and particularly in Jamaica, is there an increased dependency on technology and information, particularly information? So are we tuning in more, not necessarily just entertainment, but are we tuning more into news-related media? And what impact does that have? And this is, of course, going back to what you said about the very young and the children. What impact do you envision this would have on a youth who picking up more and more of this information, and even what you've seen among some of your students? Now this is for Mr. Sharma. Now, do you see COVID-19 permanently changing the way you do journalism? Right, so that's one question. And another question, this goes up because I've been seeing a lot of comments on social media about sports that, you know, literally we're not playing sports yet. There's always some content related to sports. So there's a lot of creativity. Can you give us a little, do you know a little bit on what goes on behind the scenes to get us that content? And finally, Dr. Nelson, yellow journalism. Yes. Can we get a little bit more information on what that is? And how did yellow journalism operate in a time, you know, there are so many young people right now. My daughter, for example, will never know an era that did not have social media. So how did false information spread via yellow journalism in the past? And who were the expected audience of yellow journalism? So we're going to start with Mr. Deans, then Mr. Sharma, and then Dr. Nelson.
All right, thank you for the question, Nicole. It brings me back to a study that we had done in 2018, where with a group of college students, and it was found that a lot of the students, so to speak, were using online means of gathering information when compared to the traditional media. They were using online platforms more. And it wasn't an issue. The issue wasn't that fact that they were using it. The issue was that a lot of them weren't able to tell whether or not the information or the content of the information was credible or not. And it brings it back to the fact that the need for citizens to become more media and information literate, especially the youths, is greater now than it has been before. It's much greater now. Now, because media and information literacy, as I said before, is not one size fits all. There are different levels or different stratification in terms of media and information. For example, a person could be computer literate. It doesn't mean that the person is social media literate, so to speak. So there are different genres of literacies within media and information literacy. So much so that intercultural dialogue is also a part of UNESCO's initiative. And so when we talk about the youths and whether or not they are being affected more, we have to think about how it is that they communicate with each other. And whether or not that communication is embedded with truth or facts, you know, but we do understand the need now more than ever for society to be able to determine whether or not information, that content that they're going through is factual or not. So the need for media and information literacy is much more important now than it has been before.
All right, so now we turn to Mr. Sharma.
Thank you, Nicole, and thanks for the question. So you asked two questions. One, will COVID-19 change the face of journalism forever? And the other is getting news beyond the events that are not happening. So to address the first one, I don't think so there will be any radical change, because let me tell you, because I'm coming from an era when I started out, the high point of technology was a portable typewriter. I don't know how many people even know such a machine who are in this electronic age. Okay, and I had reporters. We're not giving out our age. Okay, so we had reporters who used to carry their typewriters with stickers of whichever cities they went, and that they used to check in and check out. Okay. One of the key things that was coming out during that time, well, journalism is going to die because everything is going to move from print, which is still an ongoing discussion that print is dead, print is dying. Yes, it is, but the key is evolution. What has happened is, from that era when it used to be, well, let me even go back, there were smoke signals, and smoke signals really transmitted the factual news from one place to the other. Okay, then when it's just the medium has changed from a print to electronic, to online, to now mobile technology, but we will always have a space, and there we always need for good writers and absolutely good stories going out there, because content will always remain the key, whatever it is. The consumption pattern has changed. Instead of the paper, now it's a mobile device. But again, what you're reading, and then again, it's complemented. So it's no longer just the black and white of the words. It's complemented by a video. It's complemented by photographs. So it is. There's a lot of mix that's going on. And as I was saying earlier in my presentation, is that evolution is the key. Now, even as journalists, as media professional, one needs to look at how one can reinvent oneself, and also learn new skills. Maybe we can learn editing skills. Maybe we can learn programming skills, for heaven's sake, because you know the medium of consumption is more out there. So it won't. At the most, what will happen is, and it will go on for a while, the whole of the social distancing and other restrictions that are in place, it will definitely construe how one goes and gets stories. Okay, so till the time the things are normalized, quote unquote normalized in some form of manner, we can't go out and get stories as we used to. But then again, you are utilizing a next medium. Coming back to sports, and not only sports specifically, when yes, sports is huge. Yeah, going behind the scenes is something which is always a fun thing to do, because herein you can talk about, I mean, okay, there's no action happening on the field, but there's action happening everywhere. So even the preparation, going up to the Olympics next year, okay, how's that going? How's Japan faring? Is Japan going to be ready by July of 2021. Well, is the world going to be ready? We don't know, because right now it's still hypothetical, it's still speculation. Everything is opening up, but I mean, I'm just going back to India because the cases have ballooned. They have ballooned, I mean, exponentially. But the broader argument is India is 1.3 billion people. I can't count beyond 10. Okay, I don't know how many zeros are there in 1.3 billion. Either you let 1.3 billion people die of hunger, or you have to make a hard choice whether you let a couple of 100,000 die of COVID-19. So they had to open up the economies. And that is, I think, right now, if we made the new quote unquote normal, you know, how do we ensure that the infection doesn't spread? So get the news beyond the action in the field is to talk to the people concerned, talk to the athletes, talk to whoever, and then look into their life. I mean, there's a life story to be told everywhere. So, you know, the action coming off the field does not necessarily mean that there's no action at all. There is action, but as I said, the medium has changed. So we need to evolve, and evolution is the key. Thanks, Nicole.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. Dr. Nelson, I also have another question to add to your question trove, and I also have a question from Ricardo Ricketts, one of our viewers. So this one is from Ricardo, and this is in general, so I'll go back to Mr. Deans and Mr. Sharma at another time. But Ricardo asked, how effectively has communication been transferred to the public? This is particularly for you, Mr. Sharma. I think you're the best person to answer this question. But this is coming from Dr. Carl Watts. What is the age of misinformation? So I've added another question to your question trove, Dr. Nelson.
Right. Thanks, Nicole. Just scribbling them down. Right. So to your first question about yellow journalism, what it was also known as yellow press. And the practice actually reached its peak in the 1890s in the US. And essentially they operated like tabloid newspapers today, so to speak, where they present little or no legitimate, well-researched news. Instead, they relied on eye-catching headlines for the sole purpose of increasing sales. Who was the audience, or who comprised the audience? Anyone who could read and would be willing to purchase these newspapers. So contemporary publications would be like The Sun and probably like The Onion. These are all American newspapers, but essentially it was there was no research in whatever they were reporting. It was just all about making sales, and the fact of the matter is that there were so many different publications in existence. It was about, you know, who could get the most. So they weren't concerned with well-researched information, just about getting an audience and who would be willing to purchase it. So essentially, yellow journalism is the same thing as fake news, but it was called yellow journalism. Right. You want me to answer Carl Watts' question now?
Right, yes, please.
Right, he asked, what is the age of misinformation? That's a very good question, Carl. I thought about it myself while preparing this presentation. The fact of the matter is, as I mentioned in the very first part of my presentation, we can probably say that the age of misinformation has always been there. There has always been an age of misinformation. It's just that in the 21st century, with the technology, you know, available at our fingertips, everybody has a smartphone. A lot of people have laptops, etc. It's easier for fake news or misinformed or false news to spread. But I guess from the beginning, from man can speak and tell lies and spread rumors and create mischief, you know, all with the aim of gaining something personal, whether political power financial gain, or even simply just to entertain. So the age of misinformation isn't a particular time period where we can say, okay, it's within the last 100 years. It has always been like that. It's just that now that we're in the 21st century, and with the technology available, it is easier for misinformation to spread than before. Yeah, that's it.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nelson. Mr. Sharma, your question now.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the question. So how effectively has communication been transferred to the public? I would say it has been transferred quite effectively because, as I said, I mean, even statistics, consumption of news has gone up exponentially. And technology being the key driver in this, getting news on the hour, every hour, and as it breaks. So the communication has been transferred very effectively. Now I put it out to the people who consume that information, okay, that communication, that they need to be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of information out there. There's a information overload, which we have talked about this afternoon, and which has a very, very thin line between it being factual and it being sensational. And unfortunately, sensationalism is where a lot of people gravitate to because it has the requisite spice of life, which it's not, So it has been transferred effectively. It will continue to be transferred effectively and objectively, and in a manner that it is authentic and it is vetted. It's up to the consumers themselves, the listeners, the viewers, and the readers to be judicious and see, okay, they make a conscientious decision that if it's a sensational thing and where the source is, they should be conscious and saying, okay, they might read it, but let that not be the words that are set in stone. So always look out for authentic news sources is what I would say. And we'll continue to do our jobs as best as we can, and with whatever is presented to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. I just want to go over the numbers for UE counseling, and particularly for some of our viewers out there. So to contact UE counseling, the number is 876-970-1992. So that's 970-1992. Now another number, if you want to reach them on WhatsApp, it is 876-521-3473. It is 876-521-3473. Now, if it is that you want to make an appointment with the campus psychiatrist, the number is 876-551-0118. So it's 876-551-0118. And UE Help Hotline, it is 876-294-0042. So again, it's 876-294-0042. Now, I'm looking here. I do not see any questions. I do see one comment, and it is 1.5. This is for Amitabh. It's 1.5 billion lives versus bread and butter for some. We have to live with the new norm, and India is not alone in this respect. So that was a very good point that you had made. Ricardo said, good points. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. All right. So we've come towards the close of our program for the day, and I want to just end with the vote of thanks. A special thank you, viewers, for tuning in today. I know you could have been anywhere, we're opening up. So my joke was once upon a time going to be, you could have been in your kitchen, on your veranda, in your living room. But now we know you can leave and be on the road. So thank you for tuning in. I want to thank our main presenters, Dr. Nelson, Mr. Sharma, and Mr. Deans, for providing us with the tools needed to navigate this age of information. Dr. Stuart Dixon, your advice to us in coping through these tough times is absolute. You know what our young people call it is life. So thank you so much for showing us how we can cope with stress from COVID-19. I'm grateful to our technical team for a smooth streaming activity today. Mr. Ishmael Preston, Mr. Andre Forbes, and the rest of the crew at Mona Information Technology Services, otherwise called MITS, thank you so much. Thanks to Ms. Janet Carew and the UATV for all their assistance. I'm grateful to Ms. Michaela Hutchinson, who did a fantastic job moderating the chat today. Thank you once again, everyone.